Namco.
July of 1998 was when Soulcalibur was released into arcades. To a good degree of success, but further success was to come on the home platform, as the Sega Dreamcast version was released in August in 1999 in Japan, and a Western release would follow in the United States on the 9th of September 1999 to coincide with the American launch of the Dreamcast. By the end of '99, it would sell 1 million copies, becoming the second most successful launch title only behind Sonic Adventure. And to add to that, widespread critical acclaim. But why was it so beloved? Home ports of arcade games were a common staple of the 80s and 90s, as an easy cash-in on convenience and recognizable names, but home console versions could not compete with the better hardware at CPUs of the arcade machines. So a lot of devs had to work harder under the limitations of cartridge space and hardware to give people even a memento of the arcade experience at home. This would not be the case for Soulcalibur. The original game was made on Namco's System 12 board, an upgraded version of System 11, which was based on a prototype of the original Sony PlayStation. But Sony's PlayStation would not be the home for Soulcalibur, as the Dreamcast, which was to be released soon in the West, would become the home console home for the game. The Dreamcast version was made in roughly over half a year, and they weren't just content with just matching the arcade, but surpassing it. Better graphics, better lighting, and replacing 2D backgrounds with full 3D renders, and a bunch of extra modes and content to unlock. The story of an evil pirate, Cervantes, getting a magic sword, the Soul Edge, but brought down by Sophia and Taki, leading to one of the Soul Edge blades to shatter. It would have been destroyed if not for Siegfried fighting against a reanimated Cervantes brought back by the Soul Edge. Soul Edge now takes Siegfried as its new host when he touches the hilt of the blade, and intends to bring death and destruction while heroes plan to stop him. What can I say? Soulcalibur is amazing, astonishing, masterpiece, 10 out of 10. Great gameplay, great value of content for a fighting game, great character design. Of course, everyone has their own favorite choice of waifu. But if you don't pick Sophia, you're objectively wrong. Great music. This game is the tits. Soundtrack is amazing. I cannot recommend this to fighting game fans enough, but they've already played it. This is a must-have for every Dreamcast owner. I have all the achievements for the Xbox 360 version. Amazing, astonishing, masterpiece, 10 out of 10. I love hentai.
Well, we're very sorry, that's a rather bad start, isn't it? What we'll do, obviously, is to work on things. The engineers will get things sorted as quickly as they possibly can. In the meantime, we'll play some music.
You fool!
The year before Soulcalibur, Midway would release Mortal Kombat 4 in arcades, the first 3D entry of the series. It was not the success of its predecessors in the arcade, underperforming and being the last entry to be released there. It would, however, find a more successful life in the home, selling over 2 million copies between the PlayStation and Nintendo 64. And these home versions had their supporters, but also their limitations. PS1 had FMVs and a good controller to play on, but as it's a PS1 version, it also looks like this. Oh god, the warping. N64 is closer graphically, also uses the original arcade in-engine cutscenes instead of FMVs, but not perfect. Lower polygon counts for cartridge space. And the Game Boy Color version, well, that doesn't count. Get that shit out of here. The final version would make its way to the Dreamcast at launch to compete with the likes of Soulcalibur and also Power Stone. That doesn't count, that's not the same type of fighting game. Oh, and I guess also Virtua Fighter 3, but that doesn't count either because that was only at the Japanese launch. Americans would have to wait longer for that. Yet, despite the more positive reception to previous versions, reviews for this one were not so positive. The first reason is evident by that it was released twice. The first pressing was unfinished and very buggy. So much so that Midway actually released a second edition a month later, and some stores would offer an exchange for this version if you bought the previous one, as long as you brought your proof of purchase. They clearly rushed this shit out for the sake of having a game at launch. And for this vid, I'm just gonna play the second edition version. It might be more entertaining, but at the same time, I don't play unpatched versions of modern games. I don't really want to have to bother with an unpatched version of an old one. Second reason is one that Midway clearly had less control over, in that video game technology was moving very fast in the late 90s, to where something like Mortal Kombat 4, which was only 2 years old at the time, yet critics still called it dated and aged, such as Jeff Gertzman, who described it as like picking up a retro game experience. Nowadays, Todd Howard can put out a new version of Skyrim every couple of years with no quality of life improvements and nobody cares. That's how stagnant game technology is now. Well, it's the year of our Lord 2023. So now every game from 1999 is like a retro game experience, ironically enough. So perhaps there could be a reassessment case to make that Mortal Kombat Gold isn't so bad? Well, it's better looking than previous home console versions, but yet not quite as good as the arcade. The actual character models themselves actually look smaller than they did in the arcade. And there's really less blood on screen at a time compared to the arcade version, which looks to me like it has slightly better lighting. So, the story of Mortal Kombat 4. Thousands of years ago, Shinnok wanted to take over all 6 realms, so Raiden decided to stop him, and trapped him inside the Netherrealm, where we would never hear from him ever again. Except till now, because he escaped, thanks to Quan Chi, and he plans vengeance against Raiden, and his own fellow Elder Gods, and to finally fulfill his desired conquest of all 6 realms, starting with Edenia. So, Raiden summons the heroes of Earthrealm once more to stop him. There is a good large selection of characters, including some that weren't featured in the previous home versions or the arcade. They removed humorous stuff like friendship moves or babe abilities, but added more fatalities and weapons. See? Now it's comparable to Soulcalibur. The new characters and voices and stages have audio and music reused from Mortal Kombat 3. Not really a particular problem since the Mortal Kombat 3 tracks are the only ones I really recognize and remember. Graphics don't look that bad, although they're clearly not as good as Soulcalibur, but pretty adequate for 1999 still, I think. No, the real complaint I have with this game is definitely the AI, which is ball-bustingly hard and unforgiving. That is, until my friend told me a really easy strategy on how to beat it. Basically, you can defeat most enemies simply by spamming high punch, high kick, and jump kicks. And this is enough for most enemies, especially Goro, who you can basically just kill by spamming jump kicks entirely. In other words, you can cheese it and make it easier. Sadly, I wasn't able to catch much footage of the new fatalities because I'm not very good at pulling them off, especially not on this controller. And the final boss of the game is admittedly very disappointing, especially compared to previous bosses like Shao Kahn from MK3. And once you defeat him, it ends with him just being flushed down a toilet. Or at least, it's flushed down a portal which kind of looks like a toilet bowl. Even sounds like one too. Oh, and yeah, unlike Soulcalibur, which opted to use just images and text to tell its epilogues, this game uses fully CGI FMVs, which obviously the animation is not the best, but clearly the best they could do for 1997. That being said though, the voice acting on the other hand really had no excuse to be this hilarious.
Don't drop me. Wait, I promise. Too late, Jarek. You can't drop me. You have to uphold the law. You have to arrest me! Wait! This is brutality! You can't do it!
Wrong, Jarek. This is not a brutality. This is a fatality.
Yeah, also the saving in this game is really bad, because essentially if you don't want to accidentally erase your save every time like I did, you have to load the game at the beginning of starting it up from the options menu. It doesn't load up automatically like Soulcalibur. Well, there's Mortal Kombat Gold, the mostly mediocre competition to Soulcalibur and some other stuff. If you were a Mortal Kombat fan in '99, you probably wouldn't be too disappointed. Well, if you bought the first pressing, you probably would have been. But really, when you get down to it, it's just really a more mediocre fighting game. Even compared to other Mortal Kombat games, it certainly feels like the late 90s was kind of a stagnation for the series. You know, not so much because of MK4, but because of other things. It honestly feels like most people just mentally skip everything between MK3 and just immediately go to Deadly Alliance. Could have been a better port, could have taken more advantage of the Dreamcast's hardware, but really at the end of the day, it's just really a mediocre 3D fighter. But you know, I'm not really a huge Mortal Kombat person myself anyway, but I do have friends who are. Thank you, Emily.
The crushing pound of the mallet. The shattering blow of the club. The slashing edge of the blade.